Now that we've seen some of the basic operators like addition, subtraction, and so on, we're going to start looking at some more complicated operators and what you can do with them. So, for example, you can have an integer for your first number and an integer for your second number. And you can create an integer for the sum and say that the sum is the first plus the second. And we can print that out. We'll do a println to get the sum, and then we can just run the application. So this is no different than what we've been seeing. Okay, but maybe we want to just change first. So right now first is 5, and I want to say, okay, I want first to actually be first plus 10. And System.out.println first. And I'll run this just so we can see the output. And we get 15 again. Now this is where the equal sign becomes very important. The equal sign in computer science and in Java doesn't mean equals, which we've touched on before. It's actually an operator. It's called the assignment operator, because it doesn't declare two things to be equal or to be the same. It takes the value on the right-hand side and assigns it to the variable on the left-hand side. So line 16 here shows the assignment operator. It says take the value 5 and assign it to the integer variable first. So this says first gets 5, or 5 is assigned to the first variable. Now line 18 is doing the same thing. So on the right hand side, I'll add in some parentheses so we can see it. It says take the value in first and add 10 to it, which we know is 5. And then it says then put that value in the first variable. So before this line ever started, first was holding the value 5. Then we said, okay, give me what first is holding and add 10 to it. And one thing to notice, I'll delete this line. I can type first plus 10, and Java doesn't really like that for a few reasons. But I could create a new variable and say int second is first plus 10. And if I run this code, first is still 5. Just saying first plus 10 doesn't change the value in first. We have to reassign it to first so that now the value changes. And if I run this, now I see 15. If I do it again, first equals first plus 10. This says take the value in first, which after line 17 is actually 15 now. Not 5, not 10, but 5 plus 10. Then I add 10 more to it and print it again. So I'll add this line after. And I'll run the code. And so I get a 15 from this line, which we see here. But first is still holding the value 15, so that when I add 10 more to it, I get 25. And so this is going to be the same if we add or subtract, multiply, divide, if we do anything, any kind of operation on that variable. So the equal sign means assignment because we are taking whatever is on the right-hand side, even if that includes the variable itself. Remember, when we use a variable's name like this, we're saying, give me whatever value is inside this variable. And before we hit the equal sign assignment, we say, okay, first was 5, so I'm going to get that value, add 10 to it, so I have 15, and I'm just going to take that value and stick it back inside the variable. So this actually changes the number inside the variable. And if I had done this with subtraction, can run this code and I can see 5 is going to become -5, and then -5 will become -15. I can do it with multiplication so that 5 becomes 50, and then 50 becomes 250. Oh, no, sorry, 50 becomes 500 because we're multiplying by 10, not 5. I can do it with division, which division is going to be interesting. It's just going to give me 0 twice because 5 divided by 10 is 0 based on integer division. And then 0 divided by 10 is still 0. If I do modulo again, I can get similar results. 5 mod 10 gives me 5. So 5 mod 10 again still gives me 5. And we see those results. So those are that's the assignment operator. And sticking back with the plus, we get this result. And there are other ways to do this in Java. This is one of the more verbose ways. So we say first gets first plus 10. If we wanted to simplify it, we have another operator. It's the add and assign operator. I was going to say assign and add, but really we add then assign. So instead of writing first gets first plus 10, I can just say first plus equal 10. First plus equal 10. Now before we got 15 and 25, I'm going to run this. And it's going to give me the exact same result. Because this says take the variable first, plus equals says give me the value, and add 10 to it, and store it back. So this line, and I'll type it up here in a comment, first equal first plus 10, and first plus equal 10, those two lines are exactly the same. And what may be kind of unsurprising is that we also have subtract, multiply, divide, and modulo, so that we can subtract and assign, we can multiply and assign, we can divide and assign, and we can modulo and assign. And these all behave the exact same way. It says take the variable on the left, get the value, and then whatever number or value is on the right, do this operation to it, add, subtract, multiply, divide, modulo, and then store the result back in the variable. And you'll always have the operation work exactly like the relationship between line 22 and 23 here. Plus equal is the same as variable plus the new number, but times equal would do the same, so minus equal would act the same, divide equal acts the same, and modulus equal acts the same. It's just a simpler, quicker way of doing the same work. There's one more set of operations that act like this that we're going to see a lot, and these are probably some of the most commonly used operations. They are called the increment operator and the decrement operator. And what they are, we'll just do the increment operator first, is this plus plus here. So we're just going to run this code and see what happens. Just like this. We'll run it. Okay. And we get 6. So the plus plus operator takes whatever number is in the variable and adds 1 to it. So I started with 5 and I got 6. So if I do it 3 times, 6, 7, 8, I should print 8. And that's what I get. Now, in addition to the increment operator, we have, let me get the notation in the comment first. In addition to the increment operator, we have the decrement operator. And if I run this, you can probably guess that if increment adds 1 to it, decrement is going to subtract 1. So these two operators act a lot like the plus equal and minus equal for the value 1. So for example, these three operations all give me the same result. First equal first plus 1, first plus equal 1, and first plus plus all give me the exact same result. But what you may be surprised to learn is that I can write it like this, first plus plus, and get a result. And the number I get is 6. But I am also able to write plus plus first. And if I run the code, I still get 6. So really, there's actually two versions of these operators. There is the postfix increment and decrement operator, which these are probably the most common ways you'll see these operators used. But you can also see them written this way, where the symbol comes before the variable, and these are called the prefix operators. And the question always comes up is, well, what's the difference? And here is the best way to illustrate the difference that I know. And so I'm going to start by showing a bad way to show it. So we'll do the prefix, plus plus prefix, System.out.println prefix, and we'll make another variable for the postfix, which will start at 1, postfix plus plus, System.out.println postfix. Okay, so notice they both start with a value of 1. I increment, and then I print the result. So if they both started at 1, and if they acted exactly the same, I should see 2 twice. And I do see 2 for the prefix and 2 for the postfix. So at this point, they look like they're acting exactly the same. So it is kind of hard when you're first programming to see the difference between them. But here's a way you can actually see the result. And that's if we perform the operation while we are printing it. So here I did the prefix, then I did the postfix. So if this acts exactly as we would expect, then we should see 2 and 2. If I run the code, I don't. I see 2 and 1. So I've managed to tweak the code so we can see the difference here. And this is the difference. You only see the difference when you're trying to do multiple things in one line, or in one statement. So in this line, I am trying to increment and print. In this line, I am trying to increment and print. With the prefix increment, the increment happens before the variable is used or before the variable is printed. With postfix, the variable is incremented after it is used or after it is printed. And so it's kind of, you can think about it as a way to do a priority. If I want to print and change the value in one line, I can do it either way. This value, doing it this way on line 33 will guarantee that I see the new value when I change it. And line 36 is me guaranteeing I will see the old value when I print it. Now both of these will still change it. So if I were to run System.out.println prefix System.out.println postfix, And one cool thing you can do with System Out is if you just put in a println with nothing in it, like this one, it prints a blank line, so you can kind of break up your output. But if I run this, notice it's 2 and 1 while I am changing them, but they're both 2 after I have changed them. And so this is kind of illustrate that prefix and postfix will both change them, but one of them changes it before you do anything else with it, and one of them changes it after the line it's in. And so that's why on line 33, the prefix gives me 2, but line 36 gives me 1, while line 40 and 41 both give me 2. And so these are kind of your extra operators, and you're going to use these a lot. And this is kind of your full set of basic operators, basic operations. You've got your set of operations up here to do your math. You've got your assignment operator to take a new value and give it to a variable, or to change the value in a variable. You've got your arithmetic and assign operators that can manipulate a variable and make some changes to it while storing the value in the same variable. You've got your increments and decrements, both prefix and postfix. And so that kind of summarizes here that all 4 of these operations do the exact same thing as long as you're treating each step one at a time. Remember, these 2 are subtly different, but all 4 of them will give you the same result at the end of the day. And so these kind of wrap up our discussion on operators for right now. We'll probably see more operators later when we look at more advanced operations. But this is your full set of operators to kind of play with and get used to how they work. So I would definitely recommend trying as many of these, combining them with prints, and seeing, okay, do these act like I expect? If they don't, why not? And that's probably a good place to kind of get really comfortable with working with variables and seeing what you can and can't do. These examples in this video we've looked at with integers, but you might want to also play with doubles and see what results you get that way, because you could see very different results depending on what specific numbers you're using. The only real word of advice I would say is with your division and modulo operators, as well as your divide and assign and modulo and assign, be very careful with the number 0. And this kind of goes back to what you know from your more basic math, is division by 0 doesn't really work. So if you get a chance, I definitely recommend trying some of these with 0 and seeing what happens. And this is kind of where we start to see the relationship between mathematics and computer science. If you understand mathematics very well and at a very fundamental level, you can do some very interesting things in programming. But if you don't know your math very well, then you'll start running into errors in your program, and they may not be as obvious. So if you're going down the path of studying computer science and programming, it's definitely worthwhile to make sure that you are up to speed with and comfortable with the math you're using, because you will not be able to escape it in some of your more involved projects. But this is a good place to kind of play around with your variables and get used to all these operators, and making sure that they behave like you would expect them to, and as a way for you to build intuition for how they work.